Philippians Chapter 4, Through the Bible, Part 6. In Christ, the satisfaction of power. But I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein ye were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity. Philippians 4 verse 10. At the beginning I said that the epistle to the Philippians is primarily a thank you note. Before Paul got down to the thank you part, he dealt with Christian experience. He has been talking about Christian experience throughout the epistle. Now he is thanking them for their gift. For 2 years the church in Philippi had lost touch with Paul. They did not know where he was after he had been arrested in Jerusalem and then put in prison for 2 years. The next time they heard about him, he had been transferred to a prison in Rome. They apologized to him for not having contact with him and for not communicating their gifts to him during those years. Paul is excusing them in a most gracious manner. He says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein ye were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity. In other words, you had lost contact with me so that you didn't have the opportunity to be helpful to me. How gracious Paul was! Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. Philippians 4 verse 11. Paul said that he never made an appeal to them. He never sent out an SOS for help. Paul had learned to be content in whatsoever state he was. It didn't matter whether he was in prison or out of prison. Many of us think that if things are going right, and if we are in the right place, then we will be contented. That means that we depend on the circumstances of life for our contentment. I have asked the Lord to give me contentment. I have prayed for Him to make me just as content tape recording in my office as I am out in Hawaii enjoying the beautiful scenery. Our circumstances have a great deal to do with our contentment, don't they? But Paul had learned to be content regardless of his state. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. Philippians 4 verse 12. Paul says, though I appreciate your sympathy, I know how to live on the lowest plane economically, and I know how to live on the highest plane. I have done both. There were times when he had nothing, and he was content. There were times when God had given him an abundance, and he had learned how to abound. When I retired from the pastorate, I told my wife that there would be a terrible letdown in income and in our standard of living. I knew it would be hard for us. Paul knew how to abound and how to be abased, but we're not very good at that. I guess the Lord knew all about it, because due to the generosity of some very wonderful folk, our standard hasn't come down. We have been able to live just like we did before. We were prepared to come down, but the Lord didn't bring us down, and we do thank Him and praise His name for it. It was the custom of Dr. Harry Ironside to go every year to Grand Rapids for a Bible conference at Mel Trotter's mission. Mel Trotter had been an alcoholic, and after he had come to Christ, he opened a mission to reach other men who were in his former condition. The owner of a hotel which had just been built in Grand Rapids had been an alcoholic and had been led to Christ by Mel Trotter. He told Mel, when you have a speaker or visitor come to your mission, you send him over to the hotel. We will keep him here free of charge. When Dr. Ironside arrived at that hotel, the man ushered him up to the presidential suite. He had the best apartment in the hotel. Dr. Ironside had never been in a place like that before. He called Mel on the phone and said, listen, Mel, you don't have to put me up like this. I don't need all this luxury. All I want is a room with a comfortable bed and a desk and a lamp where I can study. Mel assured him that the room was not costing him or the mission anything. It was being provided free of charge. He said, Harry, Paul said he knew how to abound and he knew how to be abased. Now you learn to abound this week, will you? Now we come to a verse that is often quoted, but I think there are only certain circumstances in which it should be quoted. This verse is geared to life. It gets down where the rubber meets the road. This verse needs to be worked out in life. I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. Philippians 4 verse 13. This really should be translated the way Paul wrote it. I can do all things in Christ which strengtheneth me. When Paul says all things, does he literally mean all things? Does it mean you can go outside and jump over your house? Of course not. Paul says, I can do all things in Christ. That is, in the context of the will of Christ for your life. Whatever Christ has for you to do, he will supply the power. Whatever gift he gives you, he will give the power to exercise that gift. A gift is a manifestation of the Spirit of God in the life of the believer. As long as you function in Christ, you will have power. Let me give you an illustration. My favorite mode of travel is by train. I fly only because I must. The train has lots more romance connected with it, and it is much more enjoyable. It gets you there later, but it gets you there. The Santa Fe Railroad used to have a train called the Super Chief which ran between Los Angeles and Chicago. That was a wonderful train, and I enjoyed traveling on it. It traveled with tremendous power. That Super Chief could say, I can do all things a Super Chief is supposed to do on the tracks between Chicago and Los Angeles. I can pull up the Cajon Pass, the highest pass for any railroad in this country. I slow down a little bit, but I do not hesitate. I go right up to the top and down the other side. I can do all things. Now suppose the Super Chief had said, For years I have been taking people back and forth from Chicago to Los Angeles to Chicago, and it gets a little monotonous. I noticed a little group of people got off at Williams, Arizona, to go to the Grand Canyon. I've been coming by here for years, and I've never seen the Grand Canyon. I think I'll just take off across the desert here and look at the canyon for myself. Now I don't know that the train actually ever did say that, but I do know that it left the tracks one day over on the side toward the Grand Canyon. I'm here to tell you that it never did make it to the Grand Canyon. The minute it left the tracks, it was a wreck. The train was helpless and hopeless the moment it left the tracks. As long as the Super Chief was on the tracks, as long as it was doing the thing it was supposed to do, it could do all the things a Super Chief should do. It could go up and down over those mountains, back and forth from Chicago to Los Angeles. But it was absolutely helpless when it left the tracks. This is what Paul is saying about himself. I can do all things in Christ. Now, friend, if you are a member of Christ's body, he is the head, and you are to function in the context of his will for your life. His will is the track on which you are to run.